I think the packaging was an unexpected process in terms of how difficult it was, and it goes back to my mentality. It goes back to my idea of nothing can be toxic, and in order for you to avoid having to use a lot of preservatives, you better use airtight packaging so that people are not touching the product, because they can transmit bacteria with unwillingly from the hands to the product. But if you use packaging that doesn't allow the product to be in contact with the skin until it's going to be applied, then you can go lower on the preservatives. So I wanted an airless. I wanted an airless tight container. That was the first challenge, finding one that was compliant with this mentality. But also I wanted something beautiful. We deserve something beautiful, even from the packaging point of view. I think that what you use has to reflect what it is inside, from the packaging and labeling to the actual product itself. So I finally found the packaging. I tested so many bottles. I don't know how many I tested. But again, I wanted to make sure that it didn't have any metal. The airless pumps usually have like a metal spring inside, and that metal usually comes in contact with the product, and that creates a chemical reaction that you won't notice, but it might generate reactions on your skin. So I wanted an airless pump that didn't have this problem.
Okay,
So once I found the bottles, I moved on to labels, and what a disappointment that was. Let's start by saying that I had no clue of Illustrator and Photoshop. That was never my, I guess, my skill set, or I thought, I guess. And I went from disappointment to disappointment with different designers. I guess I wasn't lucky. I know there's amazing designers out there, but I just didn't find any. So I went from disappointment to disappointment in terms of designers, in terms of people not delivering what they had promised, in terms of people not not doing what we were asking them to do. Until I got to a point where I said, you know what, I'm going to learn how to do this, and I sat down for a couple of weeks with tutorials, and I learned how to do my own labels, how to do the design, how to do what was the legislation, how to do, basically what were the requirements to be able to create your own labels. I had them obviously reviewed by my legal advisor later, but I had to learn how to do it myself. And that's one more, I guess, key learning from being an entrepreneur. Some areas you try to get help as much as you can, as much as you financially can too, because it's a reality. Obviously, your resources are very limited when you're an entrepreneur, when you're starting. But sometimes you just have to roll your sleeve. You roll your sleeves all the time when you're an entrepreneur. But some areas that you were not planning on doing, sometimes you have to roll your sleeves and just do it and learn how to do it. I think I realized pretty early in the process that if I didn't learn to do certain things, I was going to be throwing money out the window. Some parts of the process become like a broken bag, where you're throwing money and it's just not going anywhere, because every time you need to make a change to your labels or to your graphics, or you want to make a pretty post on Instagram or whatever, change the color of your logo or make it transparent, if you don't know how to do it yourself, you end up paying a lot of money, and you end up losing a lot of time, and you end up like breathing on people's neck to deliver on time. And it was just an area where I didn't have luck. And nowadays I feel pretty comfortable with my illustration and photography, I guess, skills. Um, but it's an area I had to learn out of desperation with what I was getting from different suppliers. Um, that's just a parenthesis in terms of some of the lessons that I've learned from being an entrepreneur. Like sometimes you have to learn where to stop and realize if what you're paying for is really worth it, or if you're better off just rolling your sleeves and doing it yourself. However, another key learning is you cannot try to do it all yourself. So it's a very fine balance that I think I know how to navigate that nowadays, between how much you want to put on your shoulders to do yourself and how much of the workload you really need to try to find someone to do it for you, and you really need to get help, right? There are some areas like Facebook ads, for example, where I know I need help because it's such a deep area, it's such a complex area. I know you can learn how to do it, but there are people who basically live and breathe this type of marketing, and they will always do it better than you. And I want to continue being the brain of the business. I guess setting the direction towards where we are navigating, as opposed to being executing and grinding all the time and trying to, not having a work-life balance. I don't have it yet, but I know that there are areas that if I don't delegate, I will never be able to really breathe and focus on the growth of the company and on making sure that this vision of helping women look beautiful and feel beautiful is going to basically go, right? It's funny that you asked me about colors. Things like deciding the colors of your company, the colors of your brand, the colors of your labels are so important, and colors are different depending on the surface where they are going to be printed, if it's glossy or if it's fabric or if it's a screen or if it's all of that is a different color code, it's a different shade even. You cannot compare a shade that you see on a screen with a shade that you see on a cloth or a paper. And these were all learnings, because again, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have the resources to go and, hire a marketing company to do this for you. So everything I was doing was basically kind of remembering what I had learned during my marketing years and applying it to my company. But even when I was in marketing, in a big multinational company, you have an army of people in marketing, right? So this person takes care of one side of things, and this one, it's an army of people doing what I was doing now by myself. And I remember even, calling my friends from the company I used to work on, and telling them, I'm dealing with this. Like, how do I do to make sure that the color of the printed label is exactly the same color that I see on these Pantone, color sheets? And I remember in this specific example, my friend saying, like, you have to go and have it, be standing by the printer before the mass production of the labels. And I was like, oh, okay. I was trying to do this on the phone with a company that was located in a different city, and they were sending me samples, and I was like, that's not the shade. And I was sending them a hex code, and they worked with a different type of color code. And so learnings like this, that at the end of the day I summarize it in 3 minutes, but it took me, it costed me months of learning this whole thing. And at the end, we came up with a label that I liked, with a label that reflected, the nature of the products, the natural spirit of the products. And we finally went to print. We were ready to print the labels. And I had been working on the boxes for quite a long time. My first samples were arriving. And when I saw the samples, I just wanted to cry. They were nothing like what I had envisioned. again, the colors, they were not, they didn't stand out. They didn't have the quality that I demanded of myself and others. The process delayed our launch day for 6 months. It was a tough decision because I was faced with the decision of, okay, do I launch now without boxes? I really couldn't because of labeling legislation, what goes on the label versus what goes on the box. So, okay, do I change the labels and then just not use the boxes? But then if I don't use the boxes, some of the products won't be totally protected when they are shipping. And I really want the best customer experience for my customers. So it was a tough decision to accept 6 more months without launching. It was disheartening to see, how you are in the hands of your suppliers somehow. Sometimes I had prepaid for 50% of it, so I needed to stick with the supplier basically, or go through like a legal battle. And this was another occasion where I basically said, roll up my sleeves and I'll work with the supplier to make sure that this complies with the quality. So again, now I knew how to do everything on Illustrator. So I fixed, the graphics and the colors and everything. I went as far as opening a hole in the prototype of the box, because the box is a tube, and I guess they didn't think of the user experience of opening the tube and it kind of sucking the air inside of the tube. So it was hard to open, and it would open with a pop, sound. And my supplier, when I told this to my supplier, he was like, yeah, we think that's cool. Like, if it doesn't make the pop, for us, it's a no-go in terms of quality. And I'm like, no, we're talking about products for women. We don't want the pop, we don't want to have to push it to open it and until it pops. And, that's fine maybe for, I don't know, for guys, for a supplement company, for a wine maybe company, but not for a product that you're going to be opening and closing every day, twice a day. They couldn't figure out how to fix it, and I took my drill and the smallest drill bit I had, and I opened a hole in the bottom of the bottle. I tried it. It was lighting properly, nicely. I went on camera with my supplier and I said, this is what I want you to do, open a hole in the bottom of the, because they were proposing changing the diameter and sending again the samples of the bottles for them to measure again. I was like, no, 6 months delay is enough. Let's just drill a hole at the bottom and make the user experience nicer. That's one example of many things I had to do with my supplier to make the boxes work. It was absolutely worth it. The boxes, the 2 boxes were beautiful. The supplier was really nice. It was just, the whole process of learning how to send the files properly. When I had sent them initially was with one of these graphic designers that wasn't really working properly for me. And then I didn't know that each sample was going to take months to be made, because it had to be made by hands and shipped from wherever they have the factory, and just a lot of issues that I really never thought of. But I bring them up because out of all these issues, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about being an entrepreneur, and I learned that no matter how hard it is, the satisfaction, you can't compare the satisfactions that you get as an entrepreneur versus the satisfaction that you get when you are an employee.